Well, good morning. Welcome to episode 10. We're going to go ahead and make Cherry Pistachio Scones. And this is from the Bread First Bakery in Washington, D.C., owned by Mark Furstenberg. And the reason that this is going to be important today is it is a place that we visit often with best friend number 2, Karen. So I've talked about many friends, and I have mentioned Karen before in the first episode, but she would be the second best friend that I met when I was in college. So Marcy was the first, and it's just chronologically how I met them, and then Karen is number 2. So Karen and I roomed with each other the last 2 years at Michigan State, and we had so much in common as far as we loved to read, we liked the same music. Henceforth, why I'm wearing a Yaz t-shirt today, which is actually from their 2008 Reconnected tour, which Karen went to in DC and sent me the concert t-shirt. But we have seen a lot of concerts together. We like the same alternative 80s music. We have gone to see The Cure together, where Little Orphan Annie opened up. Another trifecta was the concert in 1989 where it was the Sugar Cubes, Public Image Limited, and New Order at Pine Knob, or what now is DTE. And we just have this love of music. In fact, we sort of talked about the fact that we'd also gone to see, I couldn't remember if we'd gone to see GenX together when they were touring different college campuses. And in 1987, we did go and see GenX together. And she reminded me that it was also, we were torn between seeing GenX or REM and the 10,000 Maniacs was traveling at the same time, and they were about 10 days apart. Well, being college students, we could only afford one concert, so we went ahead and saw GenX. The freshman or major that I was in, we had to cut a lot of mat board, and I had sliced off part of my finger like that morning or right before that, and it had to go to the health center, the campus health center. And so she reminded me that when we went to see the GenX concert, I'd actually had that injury and it was sort of throbbing the whole time during the concert. Didn't take away from the fact that the concert was great, but she'd reminded me that I'd had that injury. Now, Karen lives in Washington, D.C., and we have great adventures when we're there together. But I also had great adventures when I was in college with her, and would also spend a lot of time with her and her family in the summers. So, I think we've talked a lot about how we connect all of these things together, and her mom, I would say, also was a second mother as well. So we have all these connections with parents and friends, and we all connect together. In fact, it was interesting in the last episode, the Icelandic episode, one of the people the new friends that I talked about had actually was at the same concert, that New Order, Public Image Limited, Sugar Cubes concert, the same year in 1989 that Karen and I were at, not at the same venue, but we're at the same concert. So it's all these great connections you find out when you start telling stories and remembering things, and that's just a lot of fun. Plus the fact that where Karen is with this bakery, this Mark Furstenberg, he's well known for he's a well-known fixture in food culture in DC. And his sister, who has since passed away, Carla Cohen, was one of the founders of Politics and Prose, the great, great, great indie bookstore in DC. And it's all on the same street where Karen lives. So we're going to go ahead and tell you more adventures about our time together, and we're going to celebrate with Yaz, because I don't know if I mentioned it before, but really my introduction to the music that I still listen to today was when my brother came home from college and he brought 2 albums, and that was Devo and Yaz. So a lot of just really Yaz set the tone and started me on the trajectory of the music that I listened to, and Karen and I both had the same love of the same music. I think one of the other things that is really evocative of Karen's and my friendship is that we are letter writers, and we have been really since we graduated from college. And I have all of the letters that we have corresponded, or any kind of correspondence we have had over the years. So this is just a tip of the iceberg, mind you. So I have a vertical file, and all of the past letters are stored in this vertical file. And I have to give you an example of why I love the United States Postal Service, because they bring me letters from Karen that are like golden tickets, kind of like from Willy Wonka, the golden tickets. You know when a letter arrives or a packet arrives from Karen. It's not always just letters, you know, it's also packets. And these packets have fascinating information of things like I mentioned before. You know how your friends know what you like because you have so much in common, and so they send you all these cool things. So let me just give you an example of some of the deliciousness of what I get in a packet from Karen. So, you know, I get the letter, which I do write back, by the way. It's I don't send her fabulous clippings, but we do correspond back and forth by letters. So in the last packet, to give you an example, she sent me information, updated information about the National Cathedral. I mentioned that in the first episode. An article about Depeche Mode. Oh yeah, you know I love them. I just mentioned the fact that we had gone to see The Cure together. Oh, where is it here? I had it. Oh yes, an article about The Cure. Oh yeah, that's what I'm talking about. Hold on. An update on indie stores confront the loss of foot traffic, kind of keeping me up to breast on what's happening in the DC area for indie bookstores. And then, to top it off, a really lovely update in Arts and Letters about Sinead O'Connor. And actually, my mother and I went to see Sinead O'Connor in concert in the early 90s together. So in this one little packet, I got all this magic. So keeping me up to date on things she knew I would be interested in, that we are commonly interested in. And again, when you get a package or a little packet from Karen, you know it's gonna be good. All right, so we're gonna go ahead and get started. In our mixing bowl, we're going to do 2 cups of flour. We're going to basically start with the dry ingredients, not unusual for what we've been doing. We're going to do 2 cups of flour plus more for the work surface, which we know about. We're going to take a 1/2 cup of granulated sugar and mix that in, 1 tablespoon of baking powder, and 1/4 teaspoon of kosher salt. All right, so we're going to do the 2 cups of flour. Again, this is the easy part. I haven't done scones, you know, and I will in all disclosure tell you that I've actually never made scones before. People have given us and made homemade scones for us, but I have actually never made them before. So this is kind of a fun adventure, and it was a great way to talk about our adventures in DC and a favorite bakery of where we like to visit. So this was a great time to make scones. All right, so we have 2 cups of flour. We're going to do the 1/2 cup of granulated sugar. And as you know, once you look at the recipe too, it is not very complicated. So I do not know why I have waited this long, but you know, you do other things. Okay, 1 tablespoon baking powder. Okay. 1/4 teaspoon of kosher salt. That's my quarter. There we go, 1/4 teaspoon of salt. Okay. And then we're just going to go ahead and whisk those together. I know, it's like become a character in these videos. My dough whisk, so that's how I'm going to whisk my dry ingredients around together in my mixing bowl. And then I'm going to go ahead and add the butter. We're going to, it says we need 9 tablespoons. That's 1 stick plus 1 tablespoon of chilled unsalted butter. Remember, I had mentioned before that I pretty much follow the recipe if it says salted or unsalted. And if it doesn't say anything, I do go ahead and use the regular. But in this particular case, it's very clear I'm using chilled unsalted butter. You cut those into 1/2-inch cubes. So I've cut up the 9 tablespoons, again, 9 tablespoons. That's 1 stick plus 1 tablespoon of chilled unsalted butter, cut into 1/2-inch cubes. We're gonna go ahead and add that, okay? And then we're we're going to use a pastry cutter. You can also use 2 knives to break it up, so that's a potential, you know, a possibility too. So don't be worried about that. Sometimes at the end of the day, I kind of use 2 forks or the pastry cutter and perhaps my fingers. So sometimes that's just what you have to do. You just want chunks in there, and you know, it doesn't have to be completely, you know, these are still supposed to be somewhat, you're not breaking up completely. It is chilled butter after all, so you know, you just want it to be in a variety of different clumps. So you can see here I still have to kind of work on my pastry cutter to get the butter cleaned out, and then work it a little bit more. Again, I could use the 2 forks, but I don't have great hand-eye coordination. I think I've already said that. So the 2 forks, my husband would be great at using the 2 forks, but me not so much. So we're going to go ahead and use the pastry cutter. Okay. All right. And then, so I get that taken care of here, we're going to go ahead. I'm just going to have to, sorry, I have to keep flipping this here, but so then we're going to add in the dried cherries and a 1/3 cup of pistachios. Now, this may be why I don't make scones. I often feel that scones are a bit light on whatever they're, you know, if it's a cherry scone, they're little chips of cherries. I like something a little more robust. So you're supposed to cut up your dried cherries. So this says we're going to have a 1/2 cup of coarsely chopped dried sour cherries. I'm not going to do that, so I apologize to all the scone makers if that's your thing. I am going to post this with the video, but I'm going to go ahead and not coarsely chop them. I'm going to put them in whole. Just so you know, I had to do a little sneak attack there and put them in whole, which I think from a flavor perspective adds a little more flavor. I don't know this to be true, but that's how I feel about it. So, and then to top it off, I might add a few more than just the 1/2 cup. So there, I feel like this is out there, and don't judge me. And then I'm going to go ahead and add the 1/3 cup raw unsalted pistachios, toasted plus more. We're going to crush some up for later for optional garnish. It's optional, but we're going to go ahead and add that to the mixture as well. So let's do that. Oh, it smells, you know, actually the pistachios are the thing you can really smell. That's the crazy part. I can't really smell the cherries that much, but the pistachios smell delicious. So that's all good. All right. So then in the center of my mixture, I'm going to break up a few more of these butter clumps here. In the center of the mixture, I'm going to pour a 1/3 cup of heavy cream. Okay. We're also going to use more heavy cream afterward to brush on the top of the scones before we bake them. But I'm going to form a little well. Okay. Push the other items up to the side. I'm going to pour in my heavy cream. I want to get the last bits of that out. Okay. And then we're going to add the eggs. So there are 2 eggs and 1 egg yolk. So the 2 eggs I'm adding to the well, along with my heavy cream, and then 1 yolk. Okay, there we go with that. And then we're going to stir for about 30 seconds, and we are going to form a wet dough that is not thoroughly blended. So I'm actually using my spatula, as you can kind of see. So I'm going to go ahead and mix the wet and dry ingredients together. And the fun part's going to be here in a few minutes, because you know it's been a while, a few episodes, since I have actually put anything on or rolled anything out or kneaded any dough. So this is kind of the great part about this, the scone recipe, is that we get to do that today. So that's really fun. So it'll definitely be much more of a hands-on kind of experience, which is great. And I am making a total mess. Seems like my liquid to, you know, dry ingredient ratio. Okay, so it's great that I have these great sizes of cherries, but they're kind of lopping out all over here. So I'm gonna actually do something here. I'm gonna use my hands for a few minutes. I'm gonna put flour on my hands because I have to get it out anyway, and we're gonna, you know, roll it out. So I'm just gonna get a little flour on my hands and go in and mix it up a little bit more. I just feel like sometimes, you know, a spatula or even the dough whisk, and we love the dough whisk, but sometimes it doesn't always do what you need it to do. Oh, this is a little bit better. Yeah, okay. This is coming together a little bit. Well, I still flopped that out, but anyway, coming together a little bit better. Okay. So again, what does it say? It says, form a wet dough that is not thoroughly blended. And that is true. This is not thoroughly blended, but much better than it was before. So, okay. So I want to show you what it looks like here, if I can get some of the dough off my hands, because we want every bit for our scones. This is kind of what it looks like. You know, it's kind of a rough dough, but once I get it out on my board and start working with it, it'll come together very nicely. Well, we have our dough on our board to work out, so we're going to knead this for about 40 seconds, it says. And I'm not really keeping track of the time, but you kind of have a general idea, a feel for it by a certain point. And now I kind of see where maybe the smaller cherry chips might be a little easier to work with. But anyway, we're going to find out. I'm sure they're going to be delicious. But I do also have to say, I think I mentioned a little bit earlier that you could use 2 knives to work the butter in. And that could be a bit tricky in your bowl, but forks are really what we're going for. So I'm assuming you made that leap, but anyway. So we're kneading the dough, which just, it feels great. As I said, we haven't done that for several episodes, and it just feels good to work with the dough, to smell it, to feel it, and it's just great. And we're also going to be using our measuring tape, so that's kind of fun. We haven't seen the resurgence, well, gosh, I don't think we've seen the measuring tape, you know, since those croissants. So that's going to be fun. All right. So let's get a little more flour on here. We're going to roll it out. It says to roll the dough out. We're going to do, it tells you 2 ways to go about this, whether you want to do larger scones or smaller scones. And I think I'm going to go ahead and use, because I've got these larger dried cherries, we're going to go ahead and make the larger 8 large scones. And so we're going to actually create a thick disc about 7 inches in diameter, and then we're going to cut those into 8 equal wedges. So we're going to go ahead and do the larger scones. You know, if it's nice to have a hearty kind of scone, I think, because then, you know, it's really just a nice, you could have a nice scone with a bowl of fruit in the morning for breakfast. So that just makes a nice breakfast. All right. Okay, so we've kind of got that. I think I'm ready to knead. I need a little bit more flour though. Let's move this out of the way. I'm starting to stick to my surface, which I don't want to do when we roll it out. So again, go ahead and get it's back. Okay, I don't think this will be quite as traumatic though today, honestly. I think that was its own, you know, those croissants were their own thing. So we're gonna go ahead and get a disc kind of going. Okay, let's see. Oh, the top of the bread's nice. You can see the cherries and the pistachios. It's quite lovely. Let's see. I've got more of an ellipse, I guess. So I've got actually a bigger. I'm actually too thin. I rolled it out a little bit too thin. So just as something you know, don't go crazy with your rolling, which I think is tempting to do. At least it certainly was for me. It was very tempting. We want about a 7-inch disc. Again, a thick disc since we're going to do 8. So basically it's the shape of almost like a pie pan, you know what I mean? And we'll do almost like you do pie wedges. And you'll cut them, start from the center and do 8 wedges around, and that's what you're going to put on your either silicone-lined baking sheet or parchment paper. I'm going to use parchment paper. Okay, that's a little bit better. I now have more of a disc as opposed to, I got pretty carried away there with my rolling. I think I was so excited to roll something that I got a bit carried away. All right, so we're going to go ahead and make some wedges here. Again, let me just shape this a little bit more. So we're going to go ahead and make sort of these 8 wedges and put them on our cookie sheet, okay? So I'm going to start from the center, and I'm just going to make some wedges here. And they may not come out, I might not get 8, but you get the idea. Like I said, it's kind of like a pie shape. So you're just gonna make basically a triangular little lovely wedge shape. So I'm just gonna put them on my parchment lined cookie sheet. I'm just gonna do these other wedges here. Put them all on. Because just putting them on the sheet is not the final, it's not the final deal before they go in the oven. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay, so that's good. We had a good size. I'm ending up with about 8 equally sized little wedges. You can kind of see these little 8 wedge sizes. So we're going to put them on my baking sheet. It just smells so good. Again, I have them, they're thicker. We're doing the 8 as opposed to the smaller ones. Now I would say if you want it, it's always nice to share scones or any kind of baked goods. If you want to share them, I would say do the smaller ones because you might get, you'll get more of them, so it's a nicer amount to be able to share. So, okay, so I have my wedges. All right, and then we're not quite done yet. We're gonna go ahead and, let's see, we're gonna brush the tops of all of these with heavy whipping cream. So we had it as part of our recipe that we put in the well. But in this particular case, we're going to brush on heavy whipping cream on all of the scones. And then, and this is the cool part, now you can add crushed pistachios as a garnish on the top of these. I'm not gonna do that, I don't think this time. I'm gonna go ahead, and it did say it was optional. I'm just gonna brush them with the heavy whipping cream, and then also it says to sprinkle each scone with a generous amount of turbinado sugar. So that I am gonna do. I did get turbinado sugar that we're gonna put on, but I think I'm just gonna go ahead and do the heavy whipping cream and then the sugar. So we're gonna, and again, this is kind of like one of those, we've been doing, there've been a couple items that we've done that have been 2-dare types of things, but really it has not taken long at all to get these scones around so easily 1-day bake, and not quite like the Thunder Bread, which you just bake for 5.5 hours, but still that works out great for a 1-day bake. Now, when I would go and visit Karen at her mom and dad's house in the summers when we were in college, some of the fun things, I think I talked about when I was visiting Marcy's parents in New Jersey. It was kind of a similar thing when I'd visit Karen's parents. It was just sometimes sitting around and talking. Sometimes it'd be just fun with her, even her mom and her brother and I just sitting around just talking and telling stories and just being together, which I love that part of it. I love that sense of family and community. So that is actually, that's my visual image of that. Was a great memory, even though it doesn't sound very exciting, but that is the memory I hold of those times together of just her mom and just sitting around talking. And then Karen and I used to love to go, miniature golfing, which was really a lot of fun. So I just enjoyed, and some of the same things we did when I'd go visit her, we kind of do when I visit her in DC. So I'm going to tell you about what a 1-day or weekend adventure looks like with Karen in DC, because it is fantastic. So we're going to do that, but we're going to get the scones in the oven first. Okay, so I've done the heavy whipping cream on all of the scones, and then I'm going to go ahead and and it says to be generous with your turbinado sugar, so that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to be generous. Again, I'm a novice scone maker, so you might not want to listen to me for everything, but, find your own way. Or if you're a seasoned scone maker, you probably would know better than I, but we're going to be generous, as I say, with our turbinado sugar. So we've done that. And then we've done that. Okay, we're going to bake for 13 to 20 minutes. And it says, you kind of have to base this on the thickness of your scone. And since ours are thicker, I'm probably going to check it more often. So I'll set the timer for maybe, it says 13 to 20. I might set the timer for like 15 and check them then. And then you want to have them crisp and golden brown. And it does say, now just to note this, that halfway through the bake, you need to rotate the pan. So halfway through the bake, so I'm going to set really a timer for a couple of items. One, to flip my pan around, and then the other time to actually check the scones to see how they're baking. So, and then we're going to transfer them to a wire rack. So we're going to go ahead and get them in the oven, and we'll see how. Well, I want to tell you what I have been reading since we last talked. I have been reading Say Nothing by Patrick Radden Keefe. It is nonfiction, and it's the story, kind of the culminating stories, and some talking about the key people during the troubles in Ireland in the 1970s and 80s. And they focus on several key figures in that time. Jean McConville, who was taken from her home, Dolores and Marion Price, who were really part of what was happening at that time, Brendan Hughes, Jerry Adams. There are a lot of characters that were involved in the troubles in Northern Ireland in the 70s and 80s. And so this is a fascinating peek into that time and politically what was going on and looking at different sides of the story. And it's actually going to be part of the Chicago Humanities Festival, kind of a virtual book group kind of talk in the latter part of June, or maybe it's in July. It's in my schedule anyway, in my calendar. And Patrick is actually going to be part of that, the first part of that book discussion. So fascinating read. Again, it's nonfiction and just a great read on something that would have been a time that I was maturating through, like elementary school, middle school, and high school, and maybe didn't have a really huge awareness of what was going on in Northern Ireland at the time. So this is a really fascinating read. One of the best memories I have, as well, of rooming with Karen at Michigan State, is we both loved alternative movies. And there was only one small movie house, and it was in the Frandor Shopping Center in Lansing. Now, remember, we lived at Michigan State in East Lansing in one of the older dorms, Williams Hall, and we would walk to see alternative movies at the Frandor Shopping Center. And I should tell you, though, it's about 45 minutes of a walk when you walk it. I mean, when you drive it, it's like 2.5 miles. But we would walk it in all sorts of weather and walk. So we would walk to this alternative movie house, a small little movie theater in the Frandor Shopping Center, which I don't even know if it's there anymore, but we would walk and see some great alternative movies. Like The Thin Blue Line was there, and just, it's one of those memories, and that's one of the things we also do when I'm visiting her in DC. If there are some great alternative movies on in DC, which there are obviously more options there, but we will definitely go and catch a movie when we're in DC together. We have removed the scones from the oven, which you can sort of see in the foreground, and we're going to let those cool down. They're pretty hot. So we will taste those along with you and see how they go. But I wanted to give you an idea of what visiting Karen is like when I visit her in DC. And because we like to do so many things together in the arts and culture and food arena, our day starts off probably at Bread First, where I talked about at his bakery, having maybe a scone or a little breakfast sandwich before we head out. And it may not be all in the same day, but this is kind of the magic that happens in a walkabout. So we may go to Hillwood, which is Marjorie Merriweather Post's home, and they always have great exhibits, either in some aspect of design or just the house. It's a great house tour as well. But one year, Eva Zeisel, she was a phenomenal industrial designer who really spanned, I think she passed away like when she was in her early, like 102 or something like that. But she was a great industrial designer, and she designed all of these beautiful, very curvilinear, beautiful pieces. And these are actually both gifts from Karen, because we saw her exhibit there, and the exhibit was fantastic. But that's just kind of some of the things we do on our walkabouts, and Karen's really good at, before I come and visit, or even before Chris and I come and visit, on keeping track of some of the really interesting nuggets, maybe not strictly tourist things, because we've already done all of that, but just some of the key magical nuggets that she finds that we go and visit or do or experience when we're there. So great design exhibit from a great industrial designer. we may go on a Smithsonian walking tour. They have tours, history tours, and one of the walking tours was with Anthony Pitch, who wrote They Have Killed Papa Dead. And it really talks about, starting from the standpoint of when Lincoln was assassinated, and the author himself takes you on a walking tour of the different sites of the surrounding, what happened basically around Lincoln's assassination and Seward and all the people's homes and the theater and everything that happened the surrounding Lincoln's assassination. And it's with the author himself. Again, this is nonfiction. With the author himself talking about the various sites that were associated with Lincoln at that time. So again, a great walkabout, very interesting. And then somewhere in between, you're going to go and get ice cream because, you have to. Then you may stop off at Politics and Prose and hear a great author speak. It might be Diane Ackerman. This happens to be the zookeeper's wife, and we heard her speak about this one year at Politics and Prose. We have gone out and visited for the National Book Festival, which sometimes has been held, I think it's normally over Labor Day. That might have shifted over time. It used to be on the Washington Mall, but is now kind of gone inside to a large convention center there. But it's a day where you have all these different lectures and authors who are speaking, and there might be different tracks. It might be a teen track or a kids track or poetry track or fiction track. So we've had many great experiences going to the National Book Festival together. And then you might end the day at dinner at Momofuku. And then, if you're lucky enough to be there during the Cherry Blossom Festival, you might go on an evening lantern tour of the cherry blossoms, where the National Park Service provides you with lanterns, and you sort of process through the cherry blossoms in the evening with lanterns. And it is it's as magical as you might think it is. So there are all these great things. When you're doing things with a best friend, a good friend, any friend, and you're both really enjoying or really interested in the things that you're doing, it just makes for so many magic moments. And I'm pretty lucky to have that with so many friends in my life. And it starts with, I think, the letters that I shared with you, on the little nuggets that are sent that she knows that I'm just going to be like, I can't wait to open the mail. And then really ending with all of these walkabouts we go on, with finding interesting cultural and historical things to do together that she knows that I'm interested in and she's interested in, and there's something so magical about being able to do them together. Well, we're going to go ahead and try one of these Cherry Pistachio Scones and see how it is. Again, this is from Bread First, and like I said, a place that Karen and I have been many times. And so we're going to try out these scones. Although, I don't think I've ever actually had a scone from there. I tend to get their croissants because, as you know from episodes 2 and 3, that it's better to purchase them from people who do them well at a really good bakery. So we're going to go ahead and try this scone. Oh, it's nice. Oh, it's lovely. Oh, it smells really good. It has a nice golden brown top to it. So we're going to go ahead and taste it again. The first time I've made scones, you can see my very large chunks of cherries. So we'll see if this is a good thing or not. Very crumbly. Oh. Excuse me. I like the fact that you can really taste the cherry and the pistachios. It's very nice. I'm not sure if it would have, the title of the recipe is the Cherry Pistachio Scone. And I think if you had them coarsely chopped, I don't know if you'd get the same sense, maybe you would, of the cherry, but you can really taste, because you have these nice, lovely, large pieces, you can taste the pistachio and the cherry. And they're very crumbly. Very good and crumbly. Very good. I don't know where to put my rest of the crumbly, but very good. And I would definitely make these again. it's just been a nice time to talk about best friend number 2. They shape you. Your friends shape you. You cannot deny the fact that your friends shape you throughout your lifetime. They support you and shape you, and you're influenced by them and influenced together over the course of the time you know each other. And you can't help but grow together in this very wonderful way. And, it's just really interesting when I was talking about the one girlfriend from Iceland who went to the same concert in 1989 that Karen and I had gone to. Again, not in the same state, but when you start talking and sharing and being vulnerable and authentic, you find out some of these very interesting things about different connections that you have. And these sort of, it's not linear, but these wonderful sort of serendipitous connections that you have as well. So it's just really been a great day to be able to celebrate Karen today and think about all of the future magical experiences we will have together, and look forward to getting her next letter in the mail.